War of 1812 Solitaire and Pacific War 1942 Solitaire. In this video I'm going to review both of these games because they are simple, short, small games. They're based on basically the same game ideas in conception and execution and mechanics. Also, my final thoughts are the same about both, so it seemed to be more efficient that way. Solitaire games, in both games we're gonna play the role of the American side, just that in 1812 we're gonna go against the English, and in 1942, well, we are the Americans, I would say a coalition of forces in the Pacific, and this time we're fighting against the Japanese. Both maps are based on the general concept that you may know from State of Siege games. It is just that in those games you have tracks that all go towards a certain location and you're trying to defend that, trying to push away the armies that are coming towards you. Here we have multiple tracks. For example, we have the India track that is going towards Java, not towards Japan. And also this time we're going to push against that. We're not going to push away from the central location. And the War of 1812 map is even more spread out, with 2 tracks going to Montreal and 2 tracks going to York. And again, we're going to push towards those objectives. And that's why on each front, you're going to have a marker for yourself and a marker for the opponent. When you successfully push them away, then it works that way. And when they push you, the opposite is true. Now you're wondering, why don't you just have a single marker? Because there are game effects that may flip the marker of the opponent, so that front just received reinforcements, and now when you attack them, you have a -1. That is why you have that double thing. And then when you successfully push them away, then they lose the bonus. In the Pacific is the same thing. There are game effects that may give bonuses or a penalty to you. And there are also game effects that may stall your front, and then you'll need to spend action to reactivate the front. You just spend an action to do so, just as the other side was able to do that. And that's why we need 2 markers per. The sequence of play and the general idea is the same for both games, which is you start a turn by rolling a die to determine how many action points you have. You're going to have fewer actions in the Pacific than in 1812, because in the Pacific, on a roll of 1 to 3, you get a single action point. There are 50% chances that your turn will be just 1 action. With 4 to 5, you get 2 actions, and with 6, you get 3. In the War of 1812, it's you get an action, well, I call them resource here, but it's the same thing. 1 to 2, 1 action, 3 to 4, 2 actions, 5 to 6, 3 actions. And then you spend them, and each war has pretty much very similar actions that you can spend them. You can spend them too. For example, here again, if you were stalled, you spend an action to flip that one face up. You can spend an action to ask for reinforcements. So you take one of these tokens and you place it next to a front. It'll give you a die roll. Which basically means you're spending an action to bank a die roll for later, because you could spend an action to do a die roll. Or you can spend an action to get a token that will give you a die roll later. You can spend an action to try to take control of the water. I call it that way because we had 3 areas, 3 oceans here, or 3 areas in the ocean here, and we have 3 lakes here. But the procedure is the same. If you spend an action to try to take control of a water area, you roll a die and you look at the results. 1 to 3, ship battle results, no effect. 4 to 6, attacker wins and chain control. Suppose I decide to spend an action here because I want to take control of that lake, and I'm successful, booyah. And then I spend another action there, booyah. And of course there are advantages based on that. For example, here the enemy is a lot more powerful and they can advance more easily if they have control of the lake, and the opposite is true. Also, if you have control, when they activate, they may try to take it back. If they don't, if they already have that, then they'll advance on land. And then, so another thing that you want to use your actions for, of course, is to advance, which is to attack the opponent. And basically, combat is very simple. You spend an action, you roll a die, and you check to see if you advance. And if you do, you advance. If you don't, nothing happens. You just wasted that action. In 1942, 1 to 2 gets you to advance. And in 1812, it's the same. So most times you'll get to advance. However, the opponent also gets to roll and uses the same table here. There are a couple of unique things, basically things that will divert resources from you. There are game effects that may place the Europe marker in place in 1942. That will give you a penalty, so you need to spend actions to remove it. In 1914, in 1812, you will have an effect that places the Northwestern Warriors in play. That also gives you a penalty when you're fighting on that front, so you need to roll a die to try to remove that marker. But that's a general idea. You roll on your own for your own actions. You determine how many actions you get. Then you spend those actions trying to advance, to take control of the water, possibly to remove markers that are weakening you, banking die rolls for later. Once you're done, you roll a die for the enemy actions, and you simply resolve self-explanatorily what those actions are. These are the Japanese actions. You can see they change from odd turns to even turns, and the same happens for these, for the British. That's it. You do your turn, do theirs, which is super simple and intuitive, until either there are conditions that cause an automatic defeat, so if they take control of too many of your starting locations, or until the end of the turn, then you score points based on a number of different things that will give you points. Each game also has a victory condition described somewhere, and unless I'm missing something, I don't understand how that is activated. Here is about if the peace treaty was signed, if the peace occurred event is played. Here, if the atomic bomb is dropped. I saw no reference in the rules of what a peace event is, or how you drop the atomic bomb. And you lose points for not doing those events. But again, maybe it's an expansion that I didn't receive. This is the general idea. This is how you play War of 1812 and Pacific War 42 Solitaire. State of Siege games are some of my favorite games. I can play them solo, you can play cooperatively if you share decisions with others, and they are simple, they are very intuitive, but yet they give you a lot of nice, meaningful decisions. So when I saw these two games, I was super excited because they promised to be a new implementation of that idea. Could play solo, but now in different scenarios, so with more variety on the tracks. Of course, in those games you have a deck of cards. Here you only have an action table that tells you how many actions you get, a list of actions you can do, and then the events of the opponent are more scripted because there are only those events and don't have a variety there. But I thought, hey, if I have these nice looking, because they look really nice looking, simple, short games that give me a sense of the historical events and play well, that's gonna be a winner. So I was extremely excited. And then I was also disappointed after I actually played the games. And the problem for both was a very simple one: lack of agency. To me, playing games is about making interesting decisions. That's the thing that I like the most about games. So if a game makes me skip turns, so like in Monopoly, that's already a problem. And here, especially in the Pacific, that is more severe there, I felt like I was skipping a lot of turns, maybe most of my turns, because I just get one action and I spend it to flip back a token. I took an action, theoretically, but in terms of gameplay, it felt like I skipped my turn. And there are just so many turns half of them really, in which you, in 42, when you're taking a single action, and that single action is just to mitigate some damage, you don't feel like you're doing anything. And so the game feels like a little too random and a little too on autopilot, and because that one decision you get is often obvious, or you get a single attack and you fail. So not enough agency. With 1812, I felt there was a little more agency, but I still get a lot of turns with a single action that is used to something irrelevant. Maybe I get two actions and I get to roll two attacks and I fail. I felt that most of the turns I wasn't doing anything relevant, and so I felt that at the end the outcome was mainly random and didn't have much to do with my agency. I do like games where you roll dice a lot because things tend to fall under a curve, and that evens out the odd, the crazy, eccentric results, statistically speaking. But if I'm rolling to see how much agency I have, and I already know I won't have much, and many of those actions I have to take are trivial, unfortunately that really detracts from the experience. So I didn't find these games very enjoyable because I didn't find that I was doing a lot in them. Maybe one day we have an expansion, a deck of cards similar to State of Siege, with more details, with more options, more choices, and most importantly, more things to do. Then we may have what I think this game was aspiring to be, a reimagination of the State of Siege system, with different kinds of maps and more simple action resolution. But again, I don't have enough agency in these games to care about what really happens in them. Too bad. The production is very nice, but for the fact that some parts of the rule books are a little unclear to me, I still haven't figured out how to drop the bomb. But again, maybe I misread something. You know what? Even if I misread something and you could add the peace treaty, you could add the bombs, the atomic bomb, I will still be playing a lot of turns in which I feel I'm not doing anything interesting, and that makes the game not very interesting to me.